Okay, so how do I graph these kind of functions? Well, as I wrote, I've got identify the midline, the amplitude, whether it's reflected or not, what's the period, and because just to make sure you understand that, the period is for cosine and sine is always, the normal sine and cosine is just 2 pi if it hasn't been stretched or anything. In this case, since the b number in front of the x is 1, the period is still 2 pi. And then what I'll do is I'll draw my x and y axis, and then I'll mark 4 lines on my x-axis, and I'll always make this last number, this last line, my period. Then I'll come back to the middle and I'll cut it in half because that's halfway around the circle. I'll cut that in half and call this pi over 2. So it's pi over 2 pi, 3 pi over 2. I'm going up by half a pi each time. 4 pi over 2 is the same thing as 2 pi. And now because the midline is 0 and I know I've got a cosine function, I know I'm going to start not at the origin, or not on the midline, but up whatever the amplitude is. So in this case, it's 4. I'm going to put a point at the point 0, 4, because when cosine is 0, the y value is 1, and since this has been stretched 4, and I just realized I made a mistake because it's been reflected around the x-axis. So I got to come down 4 lines and put a point down here because of the negative. And then I'm going to come up, I'm going to put a point right on that first point. So remember, when we're drawing, this is all related to the unit circle, all related to the circle. If I start here, that's where the cosine zeroes out, and then it goes back, and then it goes down. So in this case, it's just reflected. So at pi, it's at its maximum. It's back down to 0, right? Because cosine is 0 there at 3 pi over 2. And then I'm going to come back down to the starting point. And then I just kind of put I want to make this look like a curve, because we know there's some changes it's not just like the straight line. So you just do the best you can, kind of sketching in some curves, and you'll see my work isn't always the best, but I'm trying to show a little bit of concavity going on here. So that's one cycle of this graph. If I want to do more, I can either go to the left, I would go 4 lines to the left, or however many lines to the left I want to go. And I just do that same kind of thing. I think it's important. You're going to convince me that you know what you're doing if you do the labeling on the x-axis. Okay, so that would be, it would zero out there, it would max out there. So there's a half a cycle. And if I want to go to the right, I can go 2 lines, and that's going to be what? Let's see, 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, 4 pi over 2. So that'll be 5 pi over 2, 6 pi over 2, which is 3 pi. And then I would add some more points. Okay, so this is just, the whole reason you need to know how to do this is because I'm going to be asking you shortly, when is a cosine equal to 0? And because you're graphing the secant or cosecant or even cotangent. So you got to know how what's happening, and that'll help you for calculus. Okay, so hopefully this helps you come up with better sine graphs, better trig graphs.